Welcome back everyone to the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. Making another in my series of videos on the Singer 403A, and today I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about some of the information I've been sort of looking at and gathering over the years. Some of you may be aware of this as well, but sometimes very often when I make a debut series video, when I'm ready to, I've gotten the whole machine done and I'm ready to basically show it off because its overhaul is complete and I'm getting ready to list it for sale. And I like often to talk about machines in terms of what's great about them, what are some of the challenges. But this machine was so important to the Singer company and to those of us who love vintage sewing machines that I thought it would be kind of interesting while I'm still going through the different processes that I'm taking the machine through to get it overhauled. I've made a lot of progress, but I'm not ready to yet demonstrate the machine. It's got a few more things I'm going to do and a few more videos I'll make. For example, I want to show how I'm going to replace this dirty, oily, gross old drip pad, which of course was mounted. You can even see the little mounting areas, and I'll be removing that and creating a new one. It's not hard, but some of you who are new to this may be wondering how you do that. So I'll be covering stuff like that, and I've got more videos to go. You guys can, you may have been noticed I now have a new black rubber bobbin winding tire, replacing the old beige tire. A lot of times the original, if it has an original tire on it, very often you'll see it in a color that matches some of the Japanese machines, and the bright colors even had bobbin tires in blue and green and pink and different colors, sometimes white. But when you look at a machine like this, you think, well, okay, it's a cream and beige colored machine from the 50s. It's, you may have seen these before. A couple of the things that I wanted to talk about why this machine was such an important launch for Singer. And again, just to kind of recap what some of you may have already seen, is that when this series of machine was created, Singer was really good about taking technology that they had used in the past, and if it worked good, they would keep it. They never were a company that completely reinvented the wheel on a constant basis. And if you look in some of the Singer history, some people have written about the history of vintage sewing machines, and when they write about Singer, they will sometimes say, well, Singer wasn't innovative. They were not the first to come out with certain features. And I have to disagree. I don't think that's true at all. And I think one of the reasons that idea has sort of circulated, and when people have been writing about the Singer company, is because Singer, no other company did what Singer did to this degree, which is that if they had a machine in production and it was working well and it was selling well, they would simply keep making it. And what's interesting is that they would keep doing that even when a new machine was brought out. So in 1956, 57, you see the 400 series introduced. That is the 404, which is a straight stitch machine. It looks very much like this, but you don't see any of this because there's nothing to control with zigzag. It's straight stitch only. But mechanically, the rest of its mechanics, other than the complex linkages for making multiple stitch patterns, a lot of the drivetrain down below was the same. Then you had this model, the 403A, and it was the mid-tier model. It was more money because you could do zigzag and you could do blind stitch and all the decorative stitches, but you had to insert a cam. If you didn't insert a cam, you had basically a straight stitcher, but it had the potential to transform into a multi-stitch magical wonder. Now, the machine right above this was, of course, the 401A. And an easy way, if you're looking at these machines, you think, how do I know the difference? Well, Here, again, the 404, the straight stitch, doesn't have any of this, right? This is just, it's just like a big flat beige panel. The 403 has this little device which pushes in, and then this lever right here, which when you slide over, it allows it to either perform a straight stitch, which is what the S here is for, or you can control the width, okay? And with the 401A, you have dials that you either pull or you push and you turn. And a lot of, or many, not all, but most of the decorative stitches are in a cam set that is built in. But the machine also has the hatch, just like this 403A does. And that is because there were extra stitch patterns. They couldn't get all of the stitch patterns built in. It was too many. And so they said, okay, most of them are built in. And if you really want to go whole hog, you can get, I think it was a set of 6. I'll have to go back and check the numbers. But I think it was like extra 6 patterns you could get the cams for. And I've mentioned to all of you about the cams. These are called Singer top hat cams, I guess because they look like a man's top hat. They are black. They are made of a hard plastic. I don't know if this is Bakelite or a plastic formula that would have followed. I don't know for sure, but I have found them to be extremely durable. And at some point, I need to make a video showing the machine running with the lid off, and how the cam mechanism works. I don't think I can actually show that with the thread going, but that's neither here nor there. And anyway, these cams are very durable. Okay, and you say, well, they're not metal. That's okay, because just like the little spool pins, right, that are plastic, and they're not really under physical any kind of pressure or stress that would cause them to wear out. I have never had one of these wear out. If you get one of these that's broken, there's a really good chance that it was jammed in the machine or dropped on the floor or stepped on. And so kudos to Singer for making such durable cams. Now, those of you who get any of these machines from the original owner, and you might get, if you were lucky to get a set of cams with them, you may discover that many of those cams were never used. And it's kind of funny because I'm willing to bet that many of those people who buy, who purchase new sewing machines that have tons of patterns, some of them comes with hundreds of potential stitch patterns. Most of them are never used, but they are there to encourage people to buy the new machine. And that's what Singer was doing with this, right? So why did they do this? Why did Singer launch and spend a fortune developing this entire line of machines? First of all, they had other machines still in production. That's the great thing about Singer, is they would keep old product lines in production for decades. And they had so many factories, they could introduce a whole new line of machines like the 400 Slantomatics that you see here. And yet they were still producing, in the late 50s, they were still making Singer 201s and Singer, I believe the 99, or excuse me, I think they had changed it over to the 185K, which is essentially a 99 underneath all the exterior. And they kept making these old models over and over again because they kept selling them, and they were very profitable, after making them for 30, 40 years. Because some companies would literally come out with new models, and all of their old models would instantly go out of production. So a couple of things to note, a couple of features. But again, even though this was an all-new model, it still had features that Singer had used before. Singer was great about recycling certain engineering designs that worked, even though this machine is literally a brand new model for Singer. And I'll show you some of those. Now, I was realizing this as I was making some of these videos. if you look at my home channel page for the channel for Vintage Sewing Machine Garage, you'll notice that there's a couple of photos. One of them is from the front, is a Singer 301, and the same thing is photographed from the side. And that machine was the first machine I ever restored. And I had forgotten, or just realized as I was making all these videos with this 403, that it was the same color scheme, right? It was light beige, oyster white. Those were the names that Singer gave these colors. And this machine is a reflection of its time. The first machine that Singer came out with that had the slant shank, right? I need a pointer. This is the shank of the sewing foot right here. Okay, think of it as the ankle if this is the foot. And it was designed to fit the slant-o-matic. And you can see that the needle, instead of being perfectly vertical, like most machines, it is slanted at a 10-degree angle, 10 degrees off of the vertical, sort of like this. You can see it. And it was done because it had already been done in industrial sewing machines before. And someone at Singer must have thought, hey, let's bring this to the home machine. No one's doing it. And when Singer committed to it, they went all in. I mean, they made tons of attachments for these. And the first machine that they introduced with this slant shank and needle was the Singer 301. The Singer 301 was amazing when it came out. It was about it was the same size in terms of the length and the width as this 400 series, but it had a bobbin, and those of you who have them know this. It has a bobbin and a bobbin case and a shuttle hook, just like the Singer Featherweight. So it was, by any measure, the Singer 301 was a totally new model. But they used an existing shuttle and bobbin hook design from the Featherweight, which is a wonderful version. And I often tell people, if you want a Featherweight but you want something that's bigger with a wider harp space, throat space right here, then the 301 is a great upgrade from the Featherweight. Now you have lots of people who would they would disagree with me and say, oh, no, the Featherweight is special. And of course it is. You can tell by the values of Singer Featherweights that they are cherished. But there are different reasons for that. So, okay, so Singer came out with that Singer 301 to celebrate their 100th anniversary. Very, very legendary. It had an aluminum body, and all of the drivetrain was steel. So, remember, the Singer 301 was a straight stitch machine. Now, Singer had introduced a few models. They had made attempts to make sewing machines that offered zigzag. This is not Singer's first attempt at zigzag in home sewing machines, okay? Now, they could very well have been making zigzag in industrial machines years before, and that's very possible. But talking about Singer domestic or home sewing machines, they had made certain models, a series of models that had zigzag. And I've had clients, I've restored those machines for people before. I wasn't making videos back then. And those machines are okay. They're built with great materials and great quality. From an engineering standpoint, they were not a huge success in the numbers that Singer might have imagined. And it's not clear to me, those of you who have these machines, or if you know more about the history of other Singer zigzaggers, chime in and share your comments there, because I'm a little murky on why those machines didn't become as common as you might think. And they were sold in different countries. Remember, Singer was this global, international, giant company once upon a time. So, but in any event, the Necchi company in Italy had brought zigzag from their industrial models to a home machine, and literally, and then of course the Germans did this with the Pfaff machines, and there may have been others. The point being, zigzag there were a lot of people who had zigzag on the market before Singer really went all in. And I think when they created the 400 series, Singer, they took the gloves off and said, let's go for it. This machine had a ton of patents, just like the 301 had. And, you know, it's incredible the way Singer did things. They were very smart. One of the things they did was they took a bobbin system that they had created, and many of you, you have different names for this. Let's zoom in. I'll show you guys the bobbin area here. This is a horizontal bobbin. It is technically referred to as Class 66 bobbins because Singer, I believe, first used a horizontal or drop-in bobbin, the 66, excuse me, and they did that in the Singer 66 model. The really old versions of that machine that are treadle-based are often nicknamed the Red Eye. Some of you may know those machines. And then the 3/4 version of the 66, which is the 99, which goes almost as far back as the 66, also used that. Well, in the advertising literature for this machine, Singer noted that it was the first home sewing machine to ever have a drop-in bobbin facing the sewer, because all the others had come to the side. And many of you have noticed, certainly with vintage sewing machines, often your bobbin is either going to be vertical, vertical like a Singer 15 class, where it spins like this, or horizontal like this one, and it spins like that. And the bobbin plate and the bobbin case is either accessible from the left side or from the front. But this one was noteworthy by Singer. What else did they do different? Well, typically, most machines, depends on when they were designed, because Singer kept making machines without the feature of feed dog lowering. If it was a machine they had designed, you know, decades before and it was still selling, they just kept making it. You know, they would make improvements here and there, but Singer was not, they were not always the first to start switching things around and changing things constantly. And maybe that's where the reputation for not being as innovative as the others came from. But you know what? For those of us who love vintage machines, those of us who restore them and who need parts, that is a godsend. It is one of the things I love most about Singers. And I was thinking about a video for those of you who are thinking about trying your luck at restoring a sewing machine, either just because you want to do the restoration or because you're a sewer and you want to restore your own. Singer straight stitch machines are wonderful candidates if you're getting your feet wet for the first time, because they are the most forgiving and one of the toughest machines you'll ever work on, ever. So anyway, what you're seeing here is a brand new model with a lot of innovation and patents, and yet it uses a bobbin that Singer had invented at least 60 years before or more. So it's fascinating to see how they did these things. One of the differences, of course, is that when you're, I'm going to take off the sewing foot to give you guys a better view. I want you to see the feed dogs for a moment. Well, by the way, I found my thumb screw for the sewing foot. I had found another one in my inventory, but the original made its appearance known to me. I was able to get it. Yay! This machine already has a brand new needle in there. I use a lot of different brands of needles depending on what I need. This is an Oregon titanium coated needle, and but anyway, let's show you guys a few of the things that set this machine apart. Typically, if you have a vintage machine that will allow the feed dogs to be dropped, you normally, if it was the Singer 301, there was a big sort of rod with a knurled knob on the end. You turn over here. Many machines have the indicator here, but they often, what you'll see is you'll look at the needle plate, and all of a sudden, when you adjust the feed dogs, they simply drop below the level of the plate. Some of the machines in the 60s even offered multi-levels, so you could go from full feed dogs to no feed dogs. You could also have shallow feed dogs to get a little bit of the feeding, and of course that was useful for sewing delicates. For this design, Singer said, oh, we're going to do something different. you can see over here, here's the lever, and I've since cleaned it out and oiled it. It was sticky, like a lot of things that have been sitting for decades. So over here, let's see if this zooming in will help you guys see it. You'll see it says throat plate positions. There's down, there's up, and there's unlock. Now this can be confusing if you're used to seeing up and down when it adjusts the feed dogs up and down, right? And so you have to it's kind of inverse. You have to think backwards. Up is referring, and on this machine, it's referring to the plate, not to the dogs. But watch what happens. Let's zoom in. We got the sewing foot out of the way there. Okay. Now watch what happens. I'm going to take the lever. Right now it's down. That means the plate is down. If I move it up, you can see it rising, right? It's up right here, and it's getting flush up here. But notice if I turn, the feed dogs are below the plate, right? They're not coming up. That means they won't move the fabric. If I push it all the way over to unlock, that means why would you want to unlock the plate? The plate is removable, just like other needle plates, although traditionally you had to unscrew them, such as that on the Singer 301 and Featherweight most machines. But this one, it slides out. And why would you want to do that? Well, like most machines, I'm saying this, oh, look how easy it is, you know, but it actually does. It actually releases and comes up. I think I need to get, there we go, had to get my needle and the feed dogs out of the way. There we go. I meant to push it in the other direction. There you go, guys. Sorry. I was fighting against myself, not thinking. Okay, so here it is, right? This plate, of course, is for zigzag. And you need this opening here so that the needle can swing back and forth and create those wonderful zigzag patterns. Well, this machine has its original optional straight stitch plate, which looks like this. Now, why would you want that? Very often, people would try to sew very delicate fabrics. Maybe you were sewing a really gauzy type fabric. Maybe it was a silk. Who knows what you were sewing, but if it was a very delicate fabric, people used to sew a lot of lace. And if you use the plate for the zigzag, those delicate fabrics would often get sucked down into that big space there, but not if you have this. And so you would use your straight stitching for doing that. I just noticed, I'm looking here in the camera, I've got some old dust or dirt or corrosion. I'll have to get the polish. I haven't gotten around to polishing this yet. Like I said, the machine's not completely ready. Now, go in and put the plate back, and it's just a matter of positioning it, and now we've lowered things again, or we've lowered the plate. Now, what else do you notice differently? If you take a look at the Singer 301 or most straight stitch Singers throughout the vintage era, you will notice that their feed dogs are usually only about that wide, right? Let's make sure I'm picking this up in the camera. They're not very wide, and that's really useful when you're making beautiful straight stitches. You can also play with it. You guys have seen me do that with some of the straight stitch Singers. They're some of the most forgiving machines when it comes to straight stitches, and I would argue Singers make some of the most beautiful straight stitches I've ever seen. And I'm saying this as someone who does test stitching. Those of you who sew, who are really talented sewers, I think would back me up on that if you have a Singer that you love. But this model changed that. Notice how wide the zigzag, the feed dogs are. Now, the advantage to wider feed dogs is that they typically will handle some fabrics better, right? You get people debate this either way. But anyway, these are one of the differences. Another one is that for most vintage Singers, they thread with the needle. The flat side is to the right, the groove is on the left side, and you thread them from the left towards the right. The thread goes through the eye of the needle this way. There are several Singers, though, that it's opposite. It goes from the right to the left. But this machine, and I think it's the first, I'll have to, you guys check behind me on this, but this was the first Singer where they joined a lot of the European brands, and that you now, with this model, not the 301, but with the 400 series, you install the needle with the flat side facing away, the groove is towards you, and the eye of the needle is here. I find them a little easier to thread. You can thread any machine. Don't feel bad if you don't have front to back threading, but this is just something I've noticed. Some of you may say, no, I don't care. But anyway, these are some of the noteworthy innovations that Singer was introducing, trying to stay on top. They were the best-selling brand. Notice also the color. Now, you might look at this and think, well, it was beige. What's so exciting about a beige machine? When Singer had brought out the 301 came in 3 color schemes. It came in what you see here, the combination or the two-tone, the oyster white, light beige. It came in a model that was all light beige, and they had different options. They had a long bed extension and a short, but they also had black. The Singer 301 would be the last new sewing machine model ever introduced by Singer that would come out in black during the vintage era. And you can see that by the 50s, black as just a standard for colors in many things, in cars, sewing machines, and other items was giving way. We're in the 50s and people are using bold, bright colors. And you'll notice that the same year, Singer took the old Singer 99, which was black, and when they rechristened it and restyled it as the 185J or 185, Singer 185, of course it came out in that cute little pistachio green color, and it was a different color, basically the same machine underneath, but it was modernized, right? So for Singer to use light colors like this, that was a big deal, right? That was like being edgy for Singer. Now they would later, you would see a few machines that Singer would do. They have a couple, in, like I say, the mint green, the pistachio colors. There was even some turquoise colors. But Singer was more conservative when it came to colors. You don't see candy apple reds and all these different colors, which can be a lot of fun. I don't dislike them, but this was kind of Singer's deal. This is what they did. Okay, what else did they keep? If you look here where the light fixture is, this is very similar to, it's going to have to give you guys a zoom perspective here. When they were doing the light fixture, you'll notice that I need more hands. You will notice that the light fixture is very similar, right? You have your switch down here, and you have this wonderful piece of glass. This is when the lens, they call it a lens, a magnifying lens. It's a thick piece of glass. Behind it is where the bulb is, and it was made of real glass, okay? Later, they would change that to plastic, okay? Now you can argue, well, so what? Who cares? That's not really the mechanical part of the machine, and that's true. But again, you can see over the years how the materials and the designs, they kept compromising. Just like all of their competitors, Singer was no more guilty than the rest, and eventually we got to what we have today, which is mostly junk. This was one of the features they kept from the 301. The thread path, right, and the way they had their all the little thread guides would change, particularly when you get down here to the needle bar. They had to, right? You got the needle threading in a different direction and so forth. One of the things I love about the 400 series is it kept my favorite, truly my favorite bobbin winder design of any machine. It appears on the, It appeared on the Singer 301, and I believe it was kept, well, I know it was kept on the 301, the 400 series. When we get to the 500 series, what people today casually call the Rocketeer, they moved the bobbin winder to the top, which is where many of them would end up being moved to over the years. And it changed. It was a different design, right? It would engage the hand wheel by being horizontal and pushing to the side. But there's something about this design. It's my favorite because I just flip it up. I've got my bobbin. It's just a very easy and simple design. When you push it up, it's spring loaded. It pushes against the hand wheel. It stays there until you're done. It flips out of the way. It's beefy, it's strong, but it's a simple design. It's not fussy. At least not for me, it hasn't been. Let's see. We have, again, a very similar little thread guide down here for when you're winding a bobbin. What can we talk about on the side over here? On the right side, you still have, of course, your hand wheel, just like from the 301, and you also have, I need to take this apart to actually show it to you. So we'll undo our set screw on the clutch washer. This is the same system that almost every brand of sewing machine used for generations. It's a great system. No, it's not digital, but you know what? It's beefy. It's a big clumsy thing, but it's tough. Usually, if anything happens in this department that causes an issue with the machine, is usually because some thread, when some people wind bobbins, the thread gets wrapped around here, and you have to go in and get everything untangled after you drop the clutch knob onto the floor. That was not intentional, but as you can see, it's no worse for wear. These are, again, big, strong, tough parts of the design. And as I wiggle this washer off, which is heavy and thick, I'm going to pull off the hand wheel so you guys can see it. This is the same hand wheel that you will see on a Singer 15-91 and a Singer 201. Actually, I should be referring to the hand wheel gear system. Excuse me. This hand wheel is made of aluminum. The wheel on the Singer 1591 and the Singer 201, those are steel. But they look like this on the inside because you have this gear. Why? Because you have no belt. This is a beltless system. So Singer said, hey, we'll keep the direct drive system. And in fact, they kept the same motor. Now the specs on the motor can vary. Okay, so you always want to check. Don't assume that a Singer 301 motor will be a direct fit for this machine, but they're awfully close in design. That's the point I'm trying to make here. They have, and on the 301 and on the 400 series, the hand wheel is, and the 500 series actually, the hand wheel is aluminum, and on the inner hub, you see a gear. And this gear is remarkable. I've already greased it. I'm going to talk about the motor. I'm going to try to give a separate video to this motor because it really deserves it. But just like the 301 you guys have seen me talk about, in any of the direct drive Singers, it has a gear that is not metal. Now, some people go and think, oh no, that's plastic. It's not actually plastic. If it was, I don't think it would have survived. Singer contracted with General Electric to get this gear made, and General Electric called it Textolite. I think that was the patented name for it. But it's a combination of resin and fiber. Whether it's safe to call this fiberglass, I'm not sure, but it is like fiberglass in its construction. And as long as you use the right grease, you know, nothing exotic, these gears are just incredible. I mean, this thing, you know, this is 1956, guys. It's, what is it, 65 years old, something like that, close to that. And I have yet to come across, now I'm not saying you can't find one that is that is damaged, but I'm willing to bet if it is, it was abused or not maintained, because I have yet, in the 9 years and all the direct drive Singers I've been working on, I have yet to have one come to me that was broken, unless someone dropped it. That doesn't mean it's going to last forever, but you know what? Good grief. Whatever they did something really well. And Singer had to have done a lot of testing. And I'm convinced, because this type of gear was used not just in the 50s when they were starting to do things like plastic spool pins. Singer, oh, I just saw another area I got to clean. Singer was using this way back with the early 201s and maybe even the 101s. You guys with 101s need to help me know if they were using it way back in the 30s. So back in those days, Singer would not have used this material to save money. Okay, they would later, in their later years, the later the later ebbing years of Singer's greatness. But in this time frame, they didn't use it for that reason. It's my understanding that it may have been used either because this gear with the worm gear would have been very loud, or it may have had to do with the way gears play, because when you turn the hand wheel on any of these, they engage with the worm gear of the motor very well, but there's a little bit of kind of play, and it's not from wear. This machine, when I talk about the motor, I've already inspected the motor, guys, and I can tell you this machine didn't get used much, and I'm going to show you in another video, if I remember to make that video, why or how to tell, how to guess how many hours a sewing machine has had. Sometimes I think about video ideas when I'm making another one. What can I say? I don't always imagine the video until I start making a separate one. Anyway, the point of all this is to say that this is another feature that Singer had in their back pocket. Now, not to be outdone, what else did Singer do? Singer used an electrical plug. This is the one that came with this machine. It's in brown, right? And notice it has, sometimes with, I believe with the Singer 301 and many of Singer's machines, you'll see 3 prongs, right? You see 3 brass prongs. On this machine, you have 2 prongs, but you still have the 3rd hole because, again, Singer made things easier for their service people and for their customers. Of all the brands I have ever worked on in my 9 years of doing this, I have to tell you, Singers have the most interchangeability of parts. It's not a perfect system, but it is far beyond any of the other brands. Usually the other brands would go a few years and they're like, hey, let's make this change, and a lot of things were not always compatible. Not true for Singer. It's one of the things, I have to say, it's the thing I love most about Singers in terms of being able to work on them and to fix them all these years later. So anyway, here's the plug, and there's the Singer button style analog speed controller, right? Made in USA. So even in the late 50s, they were still making them in the USA. And keep in mind, this design of the foot pedal goes way back. I want to say 1930s, right? It's certainly styled like something from that period. The point is, Singer had something that worked. They didn't just automatically reinvent the foot pedal because they had a new machine. They were very smart. Not only did it make them more profit, it made it a lot easier to keep up with parts and servicing. Now, one thing I have to show you guys, I don't know if this was introduced after, or it could have been when the Singer 301 was first launched. And that reminds me of something else I forgot to share with you. The Singer 301 and the Singer 400 series, they actually use 2 different cords, right? You'll notice there's actually, and I'll move the machine in a minute so you guys can see up close. You know, I showed you this. This is the cord with this plug, and it attaches to these prongs. That is for the power source, and you plug it into the wall. But if you were looking to get your, where are you? Come here. Everything's tangled here. If you were going to plug in your foot pedal, you would you would have your foot pedal, and it had its own separate cord with its own separate prongs that would plug into right there. Okay. Now, I believe with the 500 series, Singer moved away from this and they went to a single plug that would provide power. It simply had the foot pedal on one end and a wall plug on the other, and then it's called the double lead system. This would have been a single lead if I'm got my terms correct. But you can see that when this machine sat in the table, this plug for the foot pedal is recessed, and yeah, it'll go in there. You can get this plug in there. You know, it fits, but people would sometimes say, hey, you know, it's stressing my cord, what's going on? And at some point, Singer introduced, pretty sure they did this themselves, it's like an extender, right? So this plugs in here, and then of course you plug in, no surprise, you then plug in your your foot pedal, right? And again, I don't know if this was an upgrade, I don't know if it was an extra, or who knows, you know, I don't know if it was something that was an add-on for the dealer, who knows. But I've noticed this, I've seen these before, not everybody had them. It's possible that, you know, Singer saw an opportunity to introduce something and they did. Okay, what else can we say about this incredible feat of engineering? And it is one of the most important machines in Singer's history, because it's one of the last great all new for Singer designs of what I call the heirloom era, the era where all of the mechanicals are metal. Never mind the spool pins, and you know, we can forgive that because that's not an issue, but all the mechanicals were incredibly high quality steel, and this is one of the last generations. So the 500 series, as you guys know, and I've overhauled those as well. People do familiarly, I cannot talk today, call those the Rocketeers. The styling's different, but underneath they're mostly the same, except for, again, a few features like the bobbin winder and the plug. Keep in mind that Singer would take a lot of this engineering and they would use it for the 600 series and the 700 series. These were what were called Singer touch and sews. Now the touch and sews are just, they have the great distinction of being one of the last great sewing machines. I consider the early touch and sews the last heirloom sewing machines by Singer. They had already compromised other pieces. The top was plastic, underneath it was plastic, and if I get another touch and sew, I've only overhauled one for a client before, and it had all metal gears. But if I ever get another one, I'll do a video because I want to show you guys. It's kind of sad. It shows that Singer was not immune to the changes going on in the industry, and it was really the last of what I consider the great machines. And the touch and sews are sometimes misunderstood. And if you get one with plastic gears, I'm not a fan of those. But they did have the early ones with the metal gears, and they had some cool innovations in the touch and sew, what I consider to be one of Singer's last great innovations. Now, I thought I'd turn this up and show you guys. I have cleaned her out and she's been greased, and I think I have this in one of my other videos. I've got the pan off now because I haven't created the new felt yet. And I will do a separate video on the motor because it deserves its own time. But anyway, I want you guys to see this, right? So you see let's move the camera a little bit. I want you to see these beautiful steel gears. I've got some good light here. And when you look at this, you can imagine what it must have cost to produce. And this was made in the US, right? Now this series of machines, and I believe actually the 300, the 301, 400, 500, they were all made in a factory in Anderson, South Carolina. Singer still had plenty of factories going all around the world. They had them in the US, Canada, and they were in Europe as well. But I think Singer decided to make these in Anderson because they got a sweetheart deal to open a factory, and there's a very good chance that the factory workers in Anderson did not form unions, and that would have lowered Singer's labor costs. So you can see they were outsourcing to the South before eventually they would outsource overseas. But take a look at this, and you'll notice that if you have a 301, you have a similar type of set of gears. These beautiful steel gears with steel drive shafts, right? Some of the machines that Singer made, other models, I think it's the 328, but I have to go back and check. I'm not remembering too great today, but they would have machines that would have these gears, and then later they would replace the gears with belts. It was cheaper. The belts can create issues. I had a customer bring me one once. We had a public fixer workshop, and I volunteered to work on people's machines. I couldn't really do full restorations, but could go in there and try to troubleshoot and help them get a machine going again. And when I did, someone brought a 328. I think I've got that right. You guys help me please tell me if I've got the numbers wrong. It's one of those beautiful turquoise machines that Singer had. That person, as soon as I got it, I wanted to look underneath, and I saw gears, and I was like, oh, this is great. Eventually, they would replace a lot of the gears with belts. Belts work great when they're new, but belts stretch, and they can create issues where you have to adjust timing a lot more often than you do with most of these that have this wonderful direct gearing. So again, when you see this, guys, you are looking at one of the last of the great Singer sewing machines, an empire that began 1851, and here we are more than 100 years later, and they're still producing incredible quality. You know, like I say, no one today, I don't care what brand, who makes it, there are no home sewing machines made like this anymore. It's really sad. If you look inside some of your higher priced, higher quality, quote unquote, new machines, you will see that parts of the bodies have metal. I don't know if it's aluminum or some other form of metal, but most of them are made of plastic, even the expensive ones. Yes, I'm sorry to report that to those of you who spent thousands of dollars on new machines, and they have some great qualities. There are great things that new machines do that these old ones do not. But if there's one thing they don't do, is they don't hold up, and they don't last. They don't last for generations. We already know this, sadly. But you are looking at just a level of quality that no one makes anymore. Nobody. I don't care where you go. Now, if you're looking at industrial machines, that's a little bit different. Now, there are people who will argue that vintage industrial machines are made better than the newer ones, and I can believe that too. But you know that any true industrial sewing machine has got to be built stronger than a home machine, because they have performance requirements that are just different. But when you look at this and you realize that this machine, this incredible quality, was for a consumer product, right? It was for something that someone bought and kept for a really long time. So after a lot of cleaning and you know, vacuuming and getting the old grease out and getting everything re-lubricated, this machine has been so forgiving. One other thing to show you guys, because I'm looking at this dimension here, and that's something that we talk about sometimes when we're looking at Singer tables, and that is the bed. For a long time, and I mean generations, the dimension of the Singer sewing machine bed was an incredible standard that mattered to a lot of people and a lot of Singer's competitors. Okay, so the average, there are exceptions to this, the little 3/4 machines are exceptions, but for most of Singer's history, a good chunk of it, Singer sewing machines were 7 inches deep, and I'm talking about the bed dimension, okay? 7 inches wide or deep, and the length was 14.5 inches. And you could count on this for almost all of Singer's full-size machines. And all of Singer's tables were built to hold them. And it was great because tables were so expensive. Singer knew if they were going to sell a new machine, You didn't want to, if you kept changing your table and your bed dimension around, what were you going to do? You're going to have customers who would push back and say, well, no, I'm not spending that kind of money. I already bought a fancy table, or my mama or grandmama had a table and it was expensive. So Singer was smart. Well, so were their competitors, because many of their competitors, even Swiss Bernina, German Fabs, so many of them, and of course the Japanese, copied that dimension, because if you were going to sell a machine to someone who had one, there was a good chance they owned a Singer, and if you were going to sell it to them, your competing machine better fit in that Singer table, or you weren't getting the business. And that tells you just how influential Singer was. So if someone says Singer wasn't innovative, well, I don't know about that. Singer didn't reinvent the wheel for no reason, and this is one of the things I love about this brand. Anyway, this machine, it started with the Singer 301, the slant-o-matic line, and that includes the 400s, like this one. It includes the 500 Rocketeers. It includes the 600s, and I believe the 700s. They went to a larger bed size. They did something. This had to have been radical. You can imagine the conversations around Singer's decision makers when they decided to do this, because they were going against almost 100 years of tradition. But they went from that 14.5 dimension, 14.5 inch wide dimension, right? And they went to 16.5. They added 2 inches. Now, I don't know if I don't think they did it because of competitors, because Singer set a lot of these standards. They were so big. I suspect it was because these machines, with their new features, needed more space. I don't know if that's the case. Some of you who may know, if you know, please share your comments and help all of us understand that. But that is a big deal. So when you see this machine, obviously this machine fits in this table. The brilliant thing about Singer was, if you had a new table, and maybe you wanted to sell someone a new table, but they had an old machine. Let's say, for example, the opening in this table is 16.5 inches wide, right? Well, let's say you want to put an old Singer that has the 14.5 inch dimension, you can, because the hinge pins that the machine attaches to, they line up, okay? Now, the only time you wouldn't put, obviously you can't put a slant-o-matic or model, any model introduced after these will not fit into the traditional Singer opening. It's not wide enough. But the old ones will fit into the new tables. Now you may have a gap, right? You may have a space missing unless you have a filler plate. There's a filler plate, and some of these are attached to heavy springs to help people lift machines. So there are all kinds of things that Singer did. And when you stare at these things long enough and you look at their tables, you realize that Singer engineers were cautious, they were conservative. But when they went in, you know, whole hog. They went in 100%, and they created a line of machines that did something really, really special. I'm going to end the video here. I have the Singer motor I want to talk about. I also want to talk about, we'll do some more talking about this needle bar, because this needle bar and the way this machine does its zigzag was extremely innovative for its time. But I have been yapping for about 53 minutes now, and so I'm going to try to wind this up. I appreciate all of you watching my videos, and I know sometimes they run long, but I been trying to break them up, but sometimes I just want to kind of give you guys an overview of something like these machines. And they were made in large numbers. They're not rare. You will spend more money paying for the labor to overhaul them than you really should even pay for the machine itself, depending on its condition. But no one makes these anymore. I don't mean just this machine. No one makes home machines like this anymore, guys. Fortunately, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of these were made over industrial history. So we have a ton of them, right? It's not rare. It's, you know, you should never have to pay $1,000 for any of these. Even I sell this machine when it sells, if I sell it, I'm still debating that. You guys tell me you think this is the right machine for me. When these machines sell restored, this machine will sell for less than $500 restored. Actually, they even go for less than that. So if you have one that somebody's got in a barn somewhere, don't pay that much money for them. But they're definitely precious and wonderful to get. But again, they're not rare. But they are one of the most amazing pieces of engineering that Singer, they threw everything they had at this, and it was a huge success for them. Very costly to make, but they finally bit the bullet and went in, and this was the machine that finally put Singer on the zigzag map. They were a little late getting a big selling zigzagger. Other companies had done it before, but you know, Singer was the big gorilla on the block, and I guess they could afford to keep selling those straight stitchers that had made them fortunes for generations. If any of you have a Slant-O-Matic, let me know if this video was helpful, if you learned something. Many of my viewers know some of the things that I'm talking about because you may be as familiar with these machines as I am, but I always think that if we share enough, we'll all learn from each other. And I'm never gotten tired of working on these machines. And for me, it's all about the quality. I'm not a sewer. I can mend clothing, but I don't do a lot of sewing. I do a lot of sewing machine work, and it just blows me away, the quality that went into these. And I guess I wish all of our consumer items could be made this way. And yeah, we would pay more for them, a lot more, but we could keep them so much longer. And I really think that's so sustainable compared to buying, you know, the little plastic wonder junk stuff that's sold to us and pawned off to us as great quality when we know better. If any of you have a 401, a 404, feel free to put comments in here anyway. I haven't really paid attention to the 400 series in a long time. I may only have one other video that I've ever done because most of my 400 Slant-O-Matic overhauls were done before I was even doing videos. But let me know what you guys think, because I'm so in love with the table it came in, and I'm almost hesitant to separate it and thinking maybe I should keep this machine. I'm going to be doing some more videos, and we're going to talk about I'm going to do some sewing. Well, not really sewing. I'm going to do some sample stitching for you guys, and I want you to see this machine do its stuff and why it was such a big deal in 1956. It may not impress those of you with fancy new machines where you can push a button and do all kinds of embroidery, but this machine has no brains. It has no computer, guys. You are the brains, as I like to say, and this machine is the brawn, and it brings a ton of it. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you again soon.